Well, China is a major player in world economy today. So I do believe that China will have an important role to play in future, more than in the past, in its governance structure of the financial structure of the world as a whole.
In my view, the more leadership roles in organizations.
This is true, that if China's growing economically, then all the countries, particularly neighboring China, can be the beneficiaries of this.
Well, China is a major player in world economy today. So I do believe that China will have an important role to play in future, more than in the past, in its governance structure of the financial structure of the world as a whole. And as regards the developing countries or emerging markets, China has already established a long-standing cooperation with most of them. China is the largest and most successful emerging market, and therefore can provide financial and technical assistance, can promote trade with these countries through infrastructure development, and through FDI or foreign direct investment, can provide really support to the growth of the industrial base of those emerging markets. So there are many different ways that China and emerging markets can cooperate, and I believe will cooperate in the future. Also, there are some other issues of world importance which have come up. One is the whole issue of climate change, in which China recently committed itself. And again, by showing the way, I think it will also help other developing countries to commit themselves to tackling climate change issues, not only developing countries, but the developed countries as well, and the world as a whole.
This is true, that if China's growing economically, then all the countries, particularly neighboring China, can be the beneficiaries of this. So, for example, all the countries in the region have steadily increased their exports to China. So China is now their biggest export market. So that's a major source of both income and employment for these countries. So no question, China's rise has been very good for the region, extremely good.
First of all, China has to understand that there are going to be a lot of attacks on China coming from the West. Because once China becomes the biggest trade and investment partner with countries on the African continent, somebody will lose. And the people who will lose are the former colonial powers. So there are going to be some very serious propaganda attacks on China, and China is going to be presented in the world as a new colonial power. Now we need to fight this, because it's a very insidious form of propaganda, and is designed to build a kind of anti-Chinese attitudes amongst our people. So both China and us working together have to resist that, because China's involvement in the continent is absolutely critical if we are to really decolonize the continent. So it's necessary for the African continent to change the patterns of these relationships, and so the building of strong fraternal relations with China is a very good way of attempting to seriously decolonize our countries. And critical to decolonization is to break the economic stranglehold that the West has upon the African continent.
It's important to realize that China has always been a major presence in the United Nations and on the Security Council. It's also been a moderating voice on lots of issues. In my view, the more leadership roles in organizations. Margaret Chan was the first Chinese national to become the head of a UN organization when she became the head of the World Health Organization. But there are other opportunities for Chinese leadership. A lot of other countries have joined the bank despite the explicit American reservations about it. And that is a very interesting, important development.
President Xi Jinping spoke about this at the UN General Assembly, is to really move towards a multipolar world. In a multipolar world in which you recognize the significance of all countries in the world, never mind how big or how small they are, and that the multipolar world would work essentially for a win-win situation in terms of the international relations.